Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David E.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yanji Denise and Ryan Kalei Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Longstrugs.
Happy Aloha Friday. Thank you so much for joining us here on Spotlight Hawaii. I'm Yanji Denise, joined by Ryan Kalei Suji. And today, Ryan, we are shining the spotlight on some issues that police officers across the state are facing.
Yeah, a lot to catch up with. So we want to bring in SHOPO President Robert Cavaco. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Ryan. Good morning, Yanji. Thank you for having me back.
Well, let's begin here in the city and county of Honolulu. You know, newly named Chief Logan has been on the job now for a few months. What has the relationship been like between SHOPO and the new chief? And overall, how do you think that he is doing and the conversations that you guys have had thus far?
So far, so good with Chief Logan. We have a pretty good relationship with him, open communication. When we need things answered or issues that need to be resolved, he's very responsive, him and his team. So it's going pretty good for now, and we're interested to see his plan to move the department forward coming up. That was a big thing for him coming in to seek input from officers and his team at hand on how to move the department forward. So far, so good.
You know, one of the issues, of course, facing that department, something that we've talked about with you and him, is the staffing shortage. What kinds of recommendations has your organization made to try to increase recruitment, and have you seen anything adopted thus far?
Yeah, so as far as staffing shortage and recruitment, as far as the shortages, the department has only committed to 75% staffing, which is our position was 100%. But what we've seen in the past is that 75% going lower to like 50 or 55%, and the department wasn't staffing those beats. But ever since we have brought that issue to light, the department has been pretty steady at keeping the patrol watches at 75%. If it requires overtime, then it is what it is. But they're keeping the numbers up, and we're appreciative for that, to promote officer safety. And to continue that high level of service to the community. As far as the recruitment, we've seen a big push from Chief Logan and his administration as far as trying to cut down or increase the amount of classes in the academy, but then cut down the number of recruits in each class to give them more individualized attention. Also, we had introduced a 312 schedule to the department, to which they had accommodated a pilot program in Kaneohe and in Kalihi districts, and that's set to end in December. So hopefully we can find out from Chief Logan what he wants to do with that. But we do believe, as far as the recruitment portion, a lot more needs to be done, and that's why I think we need to come to the table to address that particular issue.
When we last spoke, you had shared some of your concerns because of the staff shortage that the department is facing, and the demand overall and what police officers are expected to do, and the amount of area they're expected to cover. It takes its toll on the officers themselves. What do you see right now as the biggest issue for officers? Is it that the amount of time? Is it still the lack of personnel? Is there sort of an issue that continues to be top of mind of the officers that you represent here on the island of Oahu?
Well, with the officers' mindset and their concerns, it is the staffing. It's staffing and what we covered before, uniforms. Just their working conditions when they come to work, to make sure that they're comfortable and have the proper tools, to do their job. So like with uniforms, currently now there's 2 uniforms that's currently being tested. It's going to be tested for 6 months. I took a look at it. The uniforms are the real cool, stretchy material that the officers want. So we're excited to see that moving forward, and hopefully after 6 months, the officers will give a good review, and then we'll be able to move forward, with that for the officers. And then as far as the staffing, the 75%, I think the only way we're going to increase that is to get more officers into the department and to increase recruitment, and then also on the back end address the retention. So that's really where us as a union are putting on the forefront. We're in discussions with Maui Mayor, and then we're going to talk to Mayor Blangiardi soon to hopefully get some kind of incentive or assistance from the counties with recruitment and retention. Maybe some type of housing allowance per month. That can go a long way. Officers, just like everybody else in Hawaii, are struggling to pay the rent and the mortgage. So every little bit counts.
Yeah, and what particular model are you looking at when you talk about like a housing allowance, for instance? Are there other cities that have done this that you think are doing it well? Can you give us a little more specifics about what kinds of things you're presenting to those mayors?
So actually, currently, right now on Maui, those that work in the Hana district and those that work on Molokai and Lanai, they get housing allowance from the county. I believe it's somewhere around $1,500 a month because the rent is so high in those rural areas. So we're kind of looking at something like that for our other members on the other counties, a monthly allowance, housing allowance. Also, years ago, former Mayor Charmaine Tavares had a incentive bonus to keep officers in the department. I believe it was only $250 a month, but then again, everything counts. So we're looking at ideas like that. When you look at the mainland, they have very large signing incentive bonuses of $10,000, $20,000 for officers to come in the department. But it's we have to see if the counties and the mayors would be willing to make that commitment.
You talked about Maui County. Let's focus a little bit on that county. Recently a survey provided some insights into what your body was feeling about the department as a whole and leadership. If you can share a little bit more about what the response has been like because of that survey, and some of the things that are happening within the department, within the personnel and leadership there.
Yeah, so with our survey that we did on Maui and with the membership there, it really opened up the lines of communication with Chief Peltier. I meet with him monthly, and we go over some of the issues that are going on with the department. And basically, it was communication, from the chief on down and through his administration. And I think he's taken the steps to improve that. Just yesterday, we saw the retirement of Deputy Chief Hanks, his number 2, and he selected a Captain Maeda, who's a local boy, into that position. We're kind of excited to see how that will move the department forward. Chief Peltier came from Las Vegas, from the mainland, and coming here into Hawaii. And, in Hawaii, policing is a little bit different than the mainland. So it's good to see that he's going to have somebody internally here below him that will hopefully give him the best advice to make the best decisions at the end of the day.
That Maui survey was pretty stunning, just with the number of officers who were not happy with their working conditions, and also the number of officers who were considering leaving the force and the consequences that could have. I believe they have about 100 vacancies in that department, give or take. What do you think can specifically be done to increase that recruitment and retention? Is it purely a financial incentive that we were perhaps talking about earlier, or is there something about the way that department is run that needs to change to keep those officers on staff?
I think it boils down to finances. It's going to be the monetary incentive or housing allowance or that sort of thing that's going to actually keep officers from leaving. But then again, on the other hand, it's also how the department is run. But we have seen some changes that Chief Peltier has done to include uniforms and load-bearing vests that he already got the officers to wear. He's looking at implementing a 312 work schedule, for the county. So he is trying to do things to try and improve that situation over there.
Shifting gears and moving a little further down south, we go to the Big Island. They are in search of a new chief. Can you provide any updates on what's happening there and what's happening on with the department on Hawaii Island?
Yeah, so Chief Ferrer retired at the end of September, and now the police commission on the Big Island has started the process for a new chief. We understand that there are 44 applicants for that position. We're a little disappointed that the commission didn't seek any input from either officers or the community at large before they start to dwindle down the candidates to the select few that are going to be left. We appreciate the fact that the commission is going to do everything by themselves and not hire a consulting firm, so that's good. But we would have wished that they seek the input first before give out the criteria on what they're going to eliminate the candidates through the process. But quite a few candidates, 44 applicants. That's almost double what we saw in Honolulu.
Yeah, that is incredible. And let's go to another county now, Kauai. We know you did a similar survey to the one you did on Maui. Can you tell us about those results and what the concerns are on Kauai County?
Yeah, so same thing that we did with Maui, we did with on Kauai with Chief Raybuck and the department. And those results were a little bit more worse than Maui. The morale is bad. There's just a lot of things that the officers don't feel that the department is being run right or the right decisions. They feel that they're not being heard by Chief Raybuck. And so we went up there last month and we presented it to all the stakeholders, the city council. We offered to give it to the police commission, but they were getting advice that due to the Sunshine Law, they couldn't attend. However, with the Sunshine Law, we invited the police commissioners as individuals, so not as a commission. So unfortunately, we weren't able to present to them. But as we speak now today, the police commission is having their monthly meeting right now, and they have afforded our officials on Kauai to present that survey to the commission and any testimony from officers and so forth to address what's going on in Kauai. Response from Chief Raybuck with the survey, it's been good. He has, been open to what can be done different on Kauai to move that department forward. So, only time will tell to see how, that situation can be improved.
As we've seen really with all the counties and undergoing new management and new leadership with all these different chiefs coming into place, Hawaii Island currently going through that process right now. Is there a model that you would recommend moving forward for when these counties have these turnovers that is the best path forward in finding that qualified leader and the leader that fits? There has been that debate over whether or not bringing someone from the outside into Hawaii to manage a department may not be the best answer, and trying to find someone local is more the way to go. Given what you've noticed from the surveys that you've seen with the other counties and what we've experienced with the hiring of Joe Logan, what do you think is the best path for that as Hawaii Island goes through this process?
Well, I think, when you're trying to select a police chief, especially here in Hawaii, we acknowledge that policing here in Hawaii is different than on the mainland, and that you do want the best and the brightest. The chief, we understand that the chief is not going to have all the solutions, not going to have all the answers, but that the person be humble and have humility and to be able to ask for help or to seek help from his team in order to solve, whatever issues at the forefront. So I think that we have very good police commissioners on each of the commissions in each of the 4 counties. They should be the ones to do the whole process themselves, to pick the chief. We really feel that there's no need for a consultant to pay for, another team from the mainland to try and dwindle down candidates. And I think one of the things that should be really imposed on by the commission to ask the candidates, especially if it's an outside candidate, who would you make your deputy chief, your number 2? And the reason why I say that is like taking Chief Peltier's situation. He came in from the outside and he brought Deputy Chief Hanks, who was also from Las Vegas. And the two of them really don't know the inner workings of the police department. And I believe that your number two, if you're the chief of police, you need to pick somebody internally from Hawaii, from the department, so that that person knows the inner workings of the department, how it works, what the history is of the department. And that way the chief can lean on that person to make sound decisions, at the end of the day. But I think that's an important thing that the commission should ask if they're looking at bringing somebody from the outside.
I want to ask you about guns. We know that there is a change, all the way from the Supreme Court that will change with the concealed carry laws throughout our state. When we spoke to Joe Logan in the past, to the chief here in Honolulu, he had said that he was reviewing, potentially hundreds of applications, and that he, if the people meet all the requirements, he would likely have to approve that. What are your members feeling as we make this adjustment? Because it is a huge change here in Hawaii, the prospect of having people legally having guns on their person when an officer gets on scene.
Yeah, so it is a huge change with our members and how they interact with the public now that there's going to be a lot of concealed carry permits issued. So Chief Logan and the department, I believe, will be offering additional training to the officers, as far as that interaction on a daily occurrence. But I think what's more important is that those that get qualified for a concealed carry permit be properly trained to handle the firearm and go through a training course and how to interact with the police. Our officers on the road every day, when they go into situations, they basically assume that what they're walking into, that person might possibly be armed. So that's how the public is treated in those situations. I think what the training will be for the officers from the department will be, how do you tell from a valid concealed permit to a fake one, or whether somebody is actually valid to carry one. So more of the administrative duties. Our officers can't determine on the road whether or not, if somebody has a gun, in their possession, whether they have a permit or not. So that's why those situations need to be treated the same. And we respect the right for our citizens to carry a gun. But yeah, it'll be a little different for our officers. We're seeing a little different perspective on the mainland in Texas. Just recently, they're actually just letting people open carry. They're getting rid of the concealed carry program. So that I was kind of reading an article on that. That's kind of interesting. But yes, for us in Hawaii, those rules that are going to come out by Chief Logan, I think are going to be very important. I think we do need to stress the fact that we need to have a process in place where either the courts or the chief can come in and revoke that permit if there's a valid reason. Somebody may be of sound mind and good judgment, now to get the permit, but several years down the line, either they go mentally ill or have a drug problem or something that I think they would have to have that permit revoked. So hopefully those type of things are in place as a protection.
Given the recruitment issues that are really not confined to just here locally, we're seeing it throughout the nation. And, some of the experts on the mainland have also said that this change with this conceal and carry language and law could also impact recruitment, as more officers are, afraid of the risks that they put themselves in. Of course, being a police officer always comes with risk. But with changes like this in policy, that could just add more levels of awareness and security and risks that come with the position. Are you at all worried of any changes in this that could hamper the department's ability to recruit more officers because of any kind of change in this law?
I'm not really worried because the dangers of the job, are already there. Our officers go out every day and there could be something bad that happens, and not go home at the end of the day to see their family. So I think the change in this law, yes, it's a little factor that might affect recruitment, but I don't think it'll have a big effect. I think that um, I think it should be okay.
I want to ask you about your relationship, and not personally, but the department as a whole and the officers that you represent with the prosecutor's office. We know that one of the issues that you had raised earlier was that on an earlier program was that sometimes an officer goes and investigates a criminal act, and then the prosecutor's office doesn't pursue it, and that is very frustrating to the investigating officer. Where do we stand on that, and what have your conversations been like with Steve Alm?
Yeah, so after that incident, things have gotten a lot better with Prosecutor Am. We've sat down and met on multiple occasions, and we reiterated our position as far as the prosecutor's office and charging cases, doing immediate charges instead of not declining the case, but releasing the person and then reviewing the case at a later time, which sometimes takes 6 to 7 months. We were able to get Steve Alm to commit to immediate charges for assault on a law enforcement officer, to have that added to their charging criteria. So we were excited about that. We're very appreciative of the Safe and Sound Waikiki program that Steve Alm has put forward. So we're interested to see what the results will be for that. But we continue in dialogue with him as far as taking those cases, because our officers are working every single day, making good cases, making good arrests, and we do need the prosecutors to seek immediate charges and to charge these individuals. And that's the only way that we're going to keep our community safe.
You're fairly new to this position as well, but during your time, there has been a lot that has already happened with you under the leadership of this union as a whole. There have been some pushback about, raises for leadership within SHOPO. There's also been lawsuits that have come your way. I'm just wondering, for you in this position, how have you been able to navigate in this role as a leader of this department? And what are some of the things that you're learning being fairly new to this job in this position?
Yeah, well, it's take one day at a time, and that's what we're kind of doing here at the union. We take one day at a time, and then address whatever's coming up. As far as the lawsuit and that criminal case, the criminal case was declined, and that lawsuit continues to move forward. We had not a proposition, but a decision that was made by our board to increase our monthly allowances, to which the board thought it was justified. And we had a portion of the membership that did not agree with it, thought that it was too high of a move as far as the amount of compensation. And so we respected that. We put it out to a vote of the membership, to which 39% participated in the vote. And of that 39%, about 85% of them felt that we shouldn't have any kind of increase. So at the end of the day, we represent the members, and if that's what the majority vote was, then we follow it, and then we move on. But we will continue to do the best job that we can to represent our members, and to seek the best possible outcome for them with their working conditions. We just solidified the 4-year contract that hopefully our 4 departments will get the retroactive pay for our members soon. So we're working on that as well. But yeah, it's just taking one day at a time, Ryan.
I want to ask you again about those uniforms. We mentioned them briefly, but it is such a difference for quality of life day to day for the officers. Can you tell us a little bit about what they are testing and what the difference is between what they're currently using here in Honolulu?
Yeah, so for decades, our department has been using like a wool type uniform. It's very hot. It's not really stretchy. And so, our officers for years have been asking for different types of uniforms, something that's more cooler, something that's more functional. These types of uniforms are actually in service right now with the sheriffs. The sheriffs have been using it now for a little bit, and really it's kind of like stretchy material. It's durable. It has those little pockets of holes on the side by your abdomen so that the uniform can breathe. It's a lot cooler, and it still looks professional. So that's what we really want the department to move on, and we're really pushing on it. We're glad to see it in its testing phase. There's also, as far as uniforms, load-bearing vests that we're hoping to get for the officers so that we can take the weight off of the gun belt and put it on the shoulders, which is much more functional.
One of the roles of the union is also somewhat engaged in the political season and endorsements of candidates. And I know that the last time we spoke, you had talked about a new way of doing this endorsement and not necessarily rushing to endorse anyone and maybe holding back if need be. Now that we are in, the final stages of this election, has there been anything that's come about through the process in which you guys go about making these endorsements? Has there been any changes there? And what has been sort of the overall feeling, I guess, of this new approach in the way in which SHOPO is looking to find these political candidates that they align themselves with?
Actually, right now, we believe that it's working. We tell the candidates, right off the bat when they come in to seek endorsement that we don't give any contributions, that we're looking for a partnership, that we support them in their campaign and that they stand for public safety, and that we'll help them in other ways, whether it's sign waving or whether it's, just canvassing the neighborhood with them or attending functions. And so that's a relationship that we're looking for with the candidates. And we haven't done one single donation to anybody's campaign. So it's a little different strategy than what we've done in the past. So we'll see how it works out, coming up in this election process and then moving forward. But for now, yeah, it seems it's been going good. We've gotten good feedback from those that we've endorsed. Some of them have sent in requests for monetary donation to their campaign, but then we explain to them and they're good with it.
We are almost out of time. I just want to close out with a final thought from you. The last time you were on here, you painted a pretty bleak picture of public safety, and it was pretty concerning, just the number of officers on patrol. And I know that you said that since Chief Logan has come on the job, things are getting better incrementally. What would you say to the public about where we are in this moment when it comes to public safety and how we can best partner with law enforcement to make sure that we all keep our communities safe?
Yeah, so we want the community to know that they are living in one of the safest, places in America, and that your police department is doing its best to keep you safe. We are at a level, though, that is in a crisis as far as staffing shortage, and what we need to do things in order to bring more officers into the profession, and also to keep officers from retiring, keeping that experience on the job. And before it gets into a more dire situation, we need to come to the table and do whatever we can to improve that situation. The 75% staffing level, we're hoping that Chief Logan and the department will increase that if we can improve on those vacancies. So even though we're short-staffed, our officers go out there every single day and to protect the community and just do their best. No matter how short we are, we're still going to do what we need to do to keep the public safe.
Okay, SHOPO President Robert Cavaco, thank you so much for joining us this morning and giving us an update on what's happening throughout the state with the various counties and the officers there as well. So we really appreciate it. Look forward to our next conversation. Aloha.
All right, aloha. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Angie.
Thank you so much for being here. Always interesting to get an update from him. It does sound like things are getting incrementally better, but he did say right at the end there that we are still in a public safety crisis when it comes to our staffing shortages, and that can ripple throughout our community because obviously we want as many police officers on the job as each community needs, and it doesn't sound like we're there quite yet. Also interesting, Ryan, to get his take sort of county by county.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. We heard from him about the feedback that officers gave in various services that were had and took place on the islands of Maui and Kauai, and some of the adjustments that are being made to those counties, as well as a search for a new chief on Hawaii Island. He's saying that there were 44 applicants, which was surprising in some regard, but also bodes well for the department that there are many within the area that are looking to step up to lead that department. And we also got an update which was kind of alarming the last time we discussed, and something that we didn't really consider was an update to the uniforms. He explained again the importance of making that update, and seems like there is a pilot program going on right now to test how the new uniforms would work.
Right. And if you think about just how hot it is outside, the idea of wearing a heavy wool uniform along with that gun belt, which is something that's developed decades ago for really a different time and a different climate, that's just not appropriate for where our officers and the environment they live in. Putting on a weighted vest instead so that some of that weight can be more evenly distributed. It's stuff that the general public just doesn't think about. But if you're an officer day to day walking outside in this heat, you can imagine just how tough that can be. He said that HPD is in the middle of a 6-month pilot program, and hopefully those uniforms will be widely adopted throughout the department to make life a little bit easier for those officers. He also talked about some proposals that SHOPO is making to the county mayors to try to increase the incentives to keep officers on the job. Really, so much of our conversation when it comes to staffing has been on recruitment. He's really focusing a lot on retention, keeping those officers on the job who have those years of experience that we don't want to lose, and saying that perhaps expanding a housing allowance. He did mention there were several zip codes where that's already in effect, where housing is particularly expensive, but perhaps a monthly allowance like that throughout many departments could be the game changer to keeping some of these officers on staff.
Yeah, and as we've had these conversations here on Spotlight Hawaii with various leaders, it is a conversation about staffing that is not confined to any one industry, department, or island, or even in this state. There are so many individuals in leadership positions that are finding themselves struggling to find workers, and the police, here on the island of Oahu, and as well as throughout the state, are also trying to find creative ways to find people and qualified candidates for the positions to help fill that need, which will in turn help, as he says, to bring more awareness and more public safety as a whole, to have more boots on the ground and more officers available to cover different beats that may be lacking the support. So always good to hear from them and get an update. Next month, we'll also catch up also with Chief Logan to hear directly from him on how things are happening at HPD. But on Monday, we switch gears to another topic.
Yeah, and this does intersect with law enforcement as well. There is, a conversation happening across the state about the possible legalization of marijuana here in our state. State lawmakers have been holding a number of public forums. The next one is actually on Monday. So ahead of that, we've invited Representative Ryan Yamane, who is helping to shepherd some of those conversations, along with Tai Cheng, who's a member of the, medical cannabis industry, to talk about what those meetings have been like, what those conversations are. It is something that is expected to be perhaps brought up in the next legislative session. It's something that the next governor will have to contend with as well. So we want to get ahead of that and talk about the possible legalization of marijuana in our state. Do join us for that conversation right back here on Monday at 10:30.
Have a great weekend. We'll see you then.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.